The Tectone files. Today, we get into a drop of documents regarding Tectone and his ongoing legal saga with his former ex. We're going to get that today on the Legal Minds, where we teach you to be your own judge. I'm Andrew Esquire, American attorney living over here in Asia. And this is a fast facts, the quick and dirty version of the latest in legal news. So let's jump right into the Tectone files. And once again, this is regarding streamer Tectone, who is today our defendant in this case, the Eggman. Now, to be a real quick disclosure, of course, I do know Tectone. He's an individual I'm familiar with, so you could say I have a bias towards Tectone. But that being said, I'm going to try to do this as neutrally as possible and present both sides of the argument. Because remember, there are always two sides of the argument, and particularly in this post-debt Me Too era, we have to consider all of the factors before we just go out and cancel someone for these allegations. And then we've got the plaintiff Pikachu, who is a streamer here, and we're going to be getting into their relationship. The important thing to notice between the defendant, Tectone, and Pikachu is they dated, right? So these are exes. They had a relationship that is now over. And then you have filings and accusations coming from this, mainly from a drop by Miskiff, who is clearly trying to put information out there that leads people away from his own case at this point. That seems to be his general legal strategy. So let's get into this. This is Pikachu versus Tectone over abuse allegations, both emotional and sexual in nature. There were filings both in the civil context and the criminal context. Now, the civil context that was taken all the way to a conclusion, but the criminal context, remind you, was a police report which was dropped. So that is very, very critical here, that there are no criminal conclusions regarding Tectone, and that's something that needs to be very, very much reinforced throughout all of this. Now, Tectone did deny the allegations of Pikachu, including her of defamation and in filing counter evidence, but Tectone ultimately lost his civil suit and was ruled liable for SA, even despite the fact that the criminal case was dropped by police. And this had consequences for Tectone because Mythic, the talent agency, which is also my talent agency, dropped him over this. Now, to be very clear about this, once again, with Mythic, I've made it very clear with them that I will be covering issues regardless of how things look. And with Mythic, they have a right, and I can say this based on my own contract, to drop you based on brand appearance, etc. And many advertisers are gun shy. So even if the allegations are just allegations, they can drop you. Think about Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp was dropped by Disney, dropped by other advertisers, simply because of allegations that were not yet proven in court. So this is something that Mythic dropping him doesn't make him per se guilty of anything at this point. Another person, by the way, that's involved in this, and we're going to get into this, is Freem, who is a former marriage partner of Tectone. So while she's not necessarily a plaintiff, Freem's information is very much relevant to this analysis. So let's get into the kind of some background here before we get into a word. But actually, before we do that, let's get into a word from today's video sponsor. And now a word from today's sponsor, Delete Me. Okay, guys, let's be real. New Year's resolutions really do not last long, usually not outside January. Gym memberships, diets, budgets, all those things that are all nebulous, that don't have any set goals, that don't have any concrete things, those usually get blown before Valentine's Day. But Delete Me, the sponsor of this video, is a quick New Year's resolution that you can complete in just 5 minutes. The resolutions that I tend to keep are ones that are fast, they're easy to finish in one sitting, and they're net positive for my life. They do something good that I can get done very, very, very quickly. And that's exactly what's offered with Delete Me, which is my first sponsor ever on this channel. It removes your personal details like contact information and your home address from hundreds of data broker sites that can be set up quickly in less time than a pizza delivery. And all of this, all the protection that you get from Delete Me runs completely in the background and does the work for you, protecting your privacy all year long. This is key for reducing your digital footprint, which can protect you from all of the scams out there on the internet. And there are tons of scams on the internet. As a naturally lazy person, and I am so lazy, this is something that even I, Mr. Captain Lazy, could get done really quickly. And it's the laziest smart thing you could do all year. Right now, get 20% discount with the link in the description and the pinned comments below. Now, we live in a world that's post-Depp versus Amber Heard. And this is actually, despite what people say, it wasn't Disney, it wasn't Doki, it wasn't anything else that really blew me up. It was Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp and covering this case. And in this case, LawTube really blew blew up because we started covering this neutrally, whereas the whole world in that Me Too era was pro Amber Heard, was pro saying believe all women, believe what she says. And it turns out that Johnny Depp was indeed wronged here, and he was vindicated in court. And so when I analyze the Tectone case, I look at this as we are in a post-Depp world. We need to live in a world where we don't believe my dog stepped on a bee, and we don't believe any tall tale that came out of what Amber Heard's mouth or anybody else says, because we've seen cases out there in the US that I've covered on this channel, like Trevor Bauer, like the Con case at Princeton, where we have people that are absolutely destroyed. Their careers are just absolutely wrecked based on pure allegation. So let's get into what happened. So all the evidence I'm treating at a higher degree if it's been filed with the court, not just online, but a lot of this stuff that's been filed, that's online, was indeed filed with the court. And every individual case has to be evaluated for its impact. So what does a civil case mean? Well, what that means is there's a standard of proof that's lower. It's preponderance of the evidence, 51%, you could say, instead of reasonable beyond a reasonable doubt, which is 99.9% of the time, and such, or up in the upper percentages of happening. But Tectone hasn't been convicted of anything criminal. So for all those out there, and I'm looking at you, all the pikers of the world and everybody else who's throwing the names out there, calling him the R word, and I can't say that because of YouTube, is not actually okay. He hasn't been convicted. That is still defamatory to label him as a criminal when he is indeed not been convicted criminally. So one thing, looking at the background here, once again, part one, just looking at the background, Travis County in Texas has a huge pro-female bias in terms of outcomes. Women who file tend to get very, very, very favorable outcomes in Texas, in Travis County. And there's a potential activist judge who had a DV bias, who had a history of that did not recuse himself in this case. Super relevant. Also, a jury pool that's biased towards the plaintiff with a skewed heavy female bias. Everybody in the courtroom being female, that can tend to bias things when it comes to these outcomes. The other thing, which is different from the Miss Kiff situation, is we haven't seen abusive communications. In fact, all the communications I reviewed show Tectone as a reasonable, kind guy. He approached Pikachu as a friend, not even as a person trying to slide into the DMs, which, number one, is not a crime, but number two, that wasn't how he approached it. He approached this very innocently after he was betrayed in a relationship, which Freem cheated on him with somebody who was working at the same company, so a work partner, right? So after he was cheated on, he ends up engaging in this relationship, which, once again, not smart to rebound, not smart to work with somebody, engage with somebody who's perhaps a streamer right afterwards. Dating streamers, always not good, right? Two streamers dating, always not good. But we haven't seen those abusive communications. In fact, when I review the communications, they look much more supportive. And by the way, I'm very, very, very cognizant as someone who struggles with depression myself. This is something I'm very, very sympathetic to for both parts, right? Because Tectone has his own mental health stuff and Pikachu has her own mental health stuff. But when I read this communications between the two, it doesn't seem like this is abusive. So Pikachu says right here, I have something called PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, that I'm being treated for. So I'm in a lot of physical pain and my emotions are really bad. Like just feeling so depressed, I don't even want to. So on stream today, it was really, really rough. I'm trying to be tough through it all, but it's not easy when it feels like the end of the world. So please be patient with me. The doctor said it could be 6 months for treatment to fully work. But in the meantime, it's awful managing the mood swings and pain. And I understand this. I understand this completely. And so I'm sympathetic to this. And I understand that there may be some other things going in there with BPD or bipolar disorder, something I'm very familiar with. And I get that. I completely get that. She says, thank you to everyone for being so kind to me while I deal with this. I'm sorry for crying on stream. Well, I did that today. Sometimes it's harder holding it in, but I'm hoping by summer it's going to go a lot better to hang in there. It's tough. I get it. It's tough. And what does Tectone say? He says, I will never understand how much this must hurt you, but proud you're fighting through it. And this is not the language I would see of an abusive partner, someone who's hurting or someone who's out there to get somebody, but someone who really genuinely wants to help and genuinely cares. So Pikachu's filings regarding Freem are contradictory. She had filings regarding Freem to get her information taken down because Freem called her a house wrecker, called her all sorts of things, filmed her again without her consent, engaging in sexual activities with Tectone. Once again, several civil and potentially criminal violations regarding Pikachu and Tectone that were committed by Freem, and Pikachu filed to stop those, which is, to me, contradictory. And it seems like this may be a case of what you call buyer's remorse in dating, where you go back and you say, okay, well, now that I'm out of this, this is a situation where it was buyer's remorse. I regret things I did, or I regret stuff I did, even though it was consensual at the time. And unfortunately, as I got to report to you guys, the U.S. legal system weaponizes this. It allows people to go back, regret things, and then go get protective orders, go make claims in the future when all of this should be dealt with privately. So my judgment at this moment, having reviewed the documents that are out there, is to withhold judgment for the moment pending release of further documentation evidence. We may have stuff that eventually gets unsealed or more communications that come out, more than just what Ms. Kiff is trying to put out to paint some sort of narrative. In a post-debt world, we all need to account for all the evidence taken as a whole before concluding somebody is ripe for cancellation. Right? Ms. Kiff releasing these documents clearly does just to take pressure off his case, which contains evidence of abusive communications. Now, I'm not saying Ms. Kiff is guilty yet. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt too. He's going to have his day in court. But if all he's got is throwing a plushie, that's not going to do enough to get away from all the accusations. And first and foremost, I also think that intimate partner relations are very personal and private. Things can get heated between partners. And you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be dragging this out to the court of public opinion and trying to sue people to make these things right. Maybe we should handle these things privately as adults between two people. Right now, judgment is withheld, but we'll get back. What do you guys think in the comments below? What do you think about Tectone, the Eggman, and what's going on with him? I'll catch you on the next.